Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us from wherever you are in the world today. It's early afternoon here in the UK. I'm certain that there are people from all sorts of different time zones. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Some of you might recognise me. My name's Alison Prout. I'm the director of INCR, one of the three organisations collaborating on this Faith Long-Term Plans programme. I'm going to be moderating today, and I wanted to just give you an introduction to the programme, and in particular the topic that we're looking at today, which is lifestyles. I suspect that many of you have participated in several of these webinars before now. If you have, and you might be slightly sick of hearing me give you an introduction, I do apologise, but I know that there are some, and I have actually seen in the chat, that there are some people who are joining us for the first time. So it gives me pleasure to give you a little overview of what the programme is and why we are running it now. As I said, this is a programme that's a collaboration between Faith Invest INCR and World Wildlife Fund. And it is, at its core, a framework for ambitious faith environmental plans. That's what we're doing this for. We are coming together to try and provide a structure, an opportunity, an excuse, encouragement, etc., to help all of you around the world from diverse and wondrous faith communities to take the opportunity to lay out what your theological motivation and your plans are for the sustaining of our wonderful planet and protection of nature. That's what we are looking for to create this sort of broad swathe of ambitious plans. The ethos of this programme is very much faith-led. We are not putting together a programme that asks you to conform to pre-set standards or activities. This is absolutely designed to help all of you think about what your theological motivation is, to take that time to do the reflection and reclaiming the narrative that will be there within your faith tradition about a relationship with nature. And from that position to move forward and think about what that means today, and particularly what it means against this backdrop of the Agenda 2030 for the Sustainable Development Goals. We're talking about faith long-term plans, but not really specifying what long-term means. Mostly this is interpreted as a sort of 7 to 10 year time frame, and that feels very apt for us and was very much part of the thinking of how we can help to support faith groups working very much in the grassroots community level to map their activity against the activity that's ongoing at a global level in pursuit of attaining the Sustainable Development Goals. This is a partnership programme with the UK government. Many of you will know that we were hoping to host the COP26 Glasgow climate negotiations in the autumn of 2020 last year. It has been postponed, and we hope to have that on home soil, as it were, in November 2021. And this programme that we're inviting you to participate in is part of the UK government's programme for COP26. As I said, it is faith-led, and we want this to be relevant and applicable to you, but we're not giving you a blank sheet of paper either, because that might be a bit intimidating. We suggest 7 key areas for you to look into. You can see them there in front of you. I won't go through them all. And we recognise absolutely that some of this will be more applicable to some of you than others. There will be some groups possibly listening in today who will think, some of this doesn't apply to them, or that they just want to focus on some areas, that's absolutely fine. And we hope that you will feel encouraged to participate, whether you feel that this is a whole program for you or just to sort of dip into bits that work for yourself. Today we are talking about lifestyles. It's a bit of a strange one to approach, because you look at that list and think, well, hang on, isn't this all about lifestyles? Aren't we talking about the faithful, religious communities, thinking and committing to what they can do individually and collectively over a sort of set period of time to really transform the environmental crisis that we find ourselves in? And of course, the answer is yes, it is all about lifestyles. But the way in which I would encourage you to think about it today is that what we're doing is thinking about how you, in working with your colleagues and friends and peers to create your long-term plans, how you can consciously ensure that you are not neglecting to cover support for your followers, for people within your tradition. How can you make sure that you don't think about, for example, energy needs and consumption patterns within your institutions, as in your schools and your hospitals and your hotels, but you also help individual members and households within your tradition to think about those same issues? So to try and make sure that there's this balance of thinking both at the individual level, but also at the institutional level too. What I do want to talk to you about is how the programme is going to unfold. Again, we're a fair way into this programme now, the webinar programme that is, which has been put together in an effort to give you ideas, resources, suggestions, and just to kind of stretch your thinking about, if they're doing that, maybe I could do that. Maybe that would work for us. We are moving well into April with our webinar programme, and at the end of this session, we will share with you details of when the next webinars are. But at the moment, we're very much in this phase one, which is recruitment. We are reaching out to as many groups as we can. We don't have very strict criteria. We are working with groups that are small and large from all faith traditions and all over the world. This is a global programme. We're looking to help support you in your plan creation, and this webinar programme is part of that. In the spring, we'll be working with you to review that plan and to think about if there's any input that you might need. Could we help you create useful partnerships? Are there technical expertise that you lack? Is there any way in which we can support you in your ambition and delivery? We will be launching and sharing the wondrous content of your plans ahead of COP26, as well as being involved in that. Phase two, of course, is very much about plan delivery. That's the core of what we're talking about here, isn't it? It's up to all of you to do the wonderful things that you've committed to do. But we're also going to be looking at the later end of 2021 at ways in which we could create frameworks or activities and processes that bring together areas in the plans that would benefit from working together in partnership. So once we know more about what you're intending to do, we'll be able to share details of how we hope we might be able to support that. So lifestyles, I've touched on this a bit before, about how, a religious lifestyle, does it always mean it's a sustainable lifestyle? Not necessarily the case, is it? And it is a challenge to all of us to think about how we interpret our faith and what our faith teachings tell us about our relationship with nature and our responsibility to nature, and to think about how that translates across into sustainable living. Some of the issues that we're going to be touching on today are the tradition of simple living, and I'm thrilled that Dr. Ruth Valerio will be joining us momentarily to talk about that. I'll be reminding and encouraging you all to think about personal consumption patterns as part of a sustainable lifestyle, as well as thinking about environmental audit and the benefits that that can bring. Dr. Husna Ahmad will be joining us to talk about green pilgrimage, obviously a huge part of religious life, but also something that can have enormous environmental impact. And last and certainly not least, Stanley Baya from Rocha, Kenya will be joining us to help us think about how communities can be involved and engaged in nature protection. We will have time for Q&A, and please do type that into the chat. There may be questions that we can answer just as we're going along, or it might be something that we will save up and keep for the panelists to answer when we bring them back at the end of the session. That's enough for me. Can I encourage Ruth to turn her video back on and step to the virtual podium? Ruth, hello.
Hi.
And talk to us about simple living. Over to you, Ruth.
Lovely. Thank you, Alison. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you to all of you for turning up. It's been really encouraging seeing your messaging down in the chat as to where you're from, and the different faiths that you're here being a part of. So thank you so much for joining in with us, and I hope that we're going to have a rich time together thinking around this theme of lifestyles. And lifestyles is something that I've been thinking about and trying to live out in various ways, really for the whole of my adult life. But right at the start of my adult life, I came to a strong realization that my Christian faith had something to do with issues of justice and poverty, and with issues of environmental care. And I was brought up very much with giving as a part of my lifestyle. My parents taught me from a very young age to give a proportion of my pocket money to charity. So that was very much a part of my life. And in fact, ironically, I think Tearfund was probably the first charity that I ever supported, amazingly. And then in my early adult years, as I came to this understanding around, a deeper understanding around poverty and environmental care, and a stronger realization around the part that governments and businesses play in either perpetuating or helping, I realized that advocacy and campaigning was really important. So I was giving money to support charities, and I was taking time regularly to write letters. At that point, no email, write letters and go on marches and talk to my MP and so on, and lobby businesses and boycott Nestle and all the different things that we were doing. And then at some point I came to the realization that actually giving my money was really important, because charities depended on my and other people's giving, and calling governments and businesses to change was also really important. But there was a missing link with that, and that was thinking about my own life and changes that I could make in my own life. And I realized that I couldn't call governments and businesses to change unless I was prepared to change my life myself. Otherwise, really, I was being a hypocrite. And that came alongside me realizing how much the way I live has an impact on other people and other places. It came about actually through some research that I was asked to do on the arms trade when I was a research assistant for someone fresh out of university, and came face to face with the reality of my investments and the importance of choosing which bank I put my money in, if I was ever going to have a pension, who my pension provider would be. And I realized that yes, I needed to call on the banks to change, but actually I had to make some decisions myself as well. So I set myself the target of trying to live in a way that did as little damage as possible to this world and all of its inhabitants, human and wider than human. Didn't have a name for it, but that was, I kind of set myself off and ended up doing all sorts of wonderful things. And then I was approached by an organisation to write something, to work with them on developing a resource called Simplicity, Love and Justice. And I said yes, started doing the work around it, and I suddenly realised, oh, this term, simple living, that seems to describe the kind of way that I've been trying to live. So I had a name for it. Now, clearly, simple living, for those of us who have been trying to simplify in one way or another, I fast came to realise is a bit of a misnomer, because it is anything but simple. And I'm sure in the chats and discussion we'll have later, and in the presentations after me, it'll be uncovered. Simple living is full of complexities and difficulties as to how we really do that in our societies today. But I had a name for it. One quote that I came across as I was writing this work has stuck with me ever since, and it's from a person called Henry David Thoreau, that some of you will know of, who's one of the early thinkers around simplicity. And he said, a person is rich in proportion to the things they can leave alone. A person is rich in proportion to the things they can leave alone. And I love that statement for two reasons. I love the use of his word rich. So simple living may conjure up ideas of living in a cold, drafty place, eating food that we don't particularly like, and living a life of deprivation. Actually, no, simple living is about discovering what it really means to be rich, and where our wealth comes from, which isn't actually from an accumulation of money and possessions, as I'm sure many of us would agree here. So it's about thinking, what does it really mean for my life to be wealthy, to be rich? Simplicity is about a rich life. And then a person is rich in proportion to the things they can leave alone, not necessarily do leave alone or have left alone, but can. And that drew me to thinking about the internal dimension of simple living, that this is about a heart attitude. It's about holding things lightly. Yes, I can have something, or I can't have something. I'm light towards that. It reminds me actually of the Apostle Paul in the Christian New Testament, who said, I've learnt to be content in all circumstances, whether I have lots or whether I have little, I'm content. And contentment really lies at the heart of simple living. So a person is rich in proportion to the things they can leave alone. Yes, lifestyle and simple living is about a lot of practical things, what we do and don't buy or consume, and this, that, and the other. But underneath all of that, it's a heart attitude of recognizing what it really means to be rich and wealthy, and whether we are able to hold things lightly. So for me, my basis, my foundation for living more simply comes from my understanding of seeing life through the lens of relationships. So I see that we have been created in order to be in relationship with, from my Christian perspective, with God. Though I know we have other faiths and you'll express that differently, but with God, with other people, with the wider natural world. And then the result of all of that is relationship with myself. And again, from my Christian perspective, as I look in the Bible, I see that we've been created to be in those relationships. We were created right back in Genesis 1 to be in relationship with God and with other people. Adam and Eve. Adam wasn't complete until Eve was created, and then you had human community. With the wider natural world, we were created to take care of and to look after the rest of what God made. And then with ourselves, that sense of inner peace that comes from having good relationships. And we live in a society that goes against all of those relationships. Consumerism teaches us to focus on money instead of God. It teaches us to see other people either as consumers or producers, people who we can abuse in order to have the goods that we want. And it teaches us to see the wider natural world simply as the environment, an inanimate object that we can use and extract resources from for our own comfort. And the result of having those negative relationships then is that we don't have well-being and we don't have peace with ourselves. So for me, simplicity is about living in a way that gets rid of all the clutter that stands in the way of those 4 relationships. And I'm aware my time is nearly finished, so I hope we can unpack this more in the questions. Obviously, that leads to a whole range of discussions. How do we live well in relationship with God? That, to me, comes down to time, building in rhythms of spirituality. And we live in a society that wants to rob us of our time and fill our time with working and with accumulating and doing things that are focused on stuff. Our relationship with others, our relationship with the wider natural world. How are we living? Are we living in ways that respect other people? When we do buy things, do we buy things that we know have helped others or that have harmed them? So when we think about simple living from the perspective of these relationships, we will touch on all sorts of things. We'll touch on how we use our time. We'll touch on how we think about possessions and what our focus is towards money and possessions. We'll think about our food. We'll think about our energy, our travel, our waste, our plastic usage. All of these things and more come together when we think about simple living in a way that we want to get rid of all of the clutter that stands in the way of those relationships. So I'm going to pause there. I hope that's been a bit of a helpful framework as we go on. Obviously, a lot more that could be said, and I'm looking forward to the discussions later on.
Thank you so much, Ruth. I'm going to abuse my position and ask you a question. I think it's so interesting, the point you make about how simple living is anything but simple. And that it is in many ways countercultural in many areas and many contexts that most these plans will be coming from. Given that, what we have today is a collection of people who I presume have joined this webinar because they are looking to prepare a long-term plan. What do you have any thoughts for them about how to sort of make this connection between something that is essentially a collective commitment that then actually reflects down into a very personal sphere of activity, and how we can, without adding layers and layers of bureaucracy and complexity, harness the relationship that we have within faith traditions between its followers and the faith, and utilize that as a kind of way of living out this expression?
Yeah, I think it may be one answer, and we can explore this more fully. Maybe one answer comes back to where I found myself many years ago, realizing that I could be part of a church and I could be doing corporate things around advocacy and campaigning, but that actually, if I wasn't living it out myself, I wasn't having integrity, and I wasn't I want to say integrous, but I don't think that's not the right word, but I wasn't living with integrity. So as we're putting together our faith plans, which are around those broader community plans and actions, I would encourage us always to be asking ourselves as well, okay, if we're going to be doing this at a faith level, at a faith community level, what would it also look like for me and for us as individuals within that faith community to be living that out in my own life as well. And I know that all of the faith traditions that we've got represented here, you will have your own resources that you can draw on that will give you that motivation. But it's holding together the individual and the community.
Lovely. Thank you so much. And thank you for taking the question now. But like you say, I'm sure that there will be lots more coming up as we go through. So Ruth mentioned in her presentation the importance of our consumption patterns and the way in which we occupy the space, our cultural space as a consumer, and the decisions that we make. Because this is, as I explained at the beginning, really a session about individual activity, I want to kind of keep anchoring that in how we create collective plans, because I think otherwise it sort of might be cut adrift and not feel quite so relevant. So in earlier webinars, those keen beans amongst you who have participated in several of them, or read the material that we've supplied you, will know that we've looked at the issue of faith consistent use of assets. So we have talked about how buildings are used, we've talked about the energy use, we've talked about food and catering, etc. As I said in my introduction, all of this applies at a household and individual level equally, but it's much harder sometimes to translate for a faith tradition. How it's kind of easier to talk about how we use a shared physical resource like a building, less easy to talk about the individual. And I think this is where a really strong emphasis between leading a faithful life and everyday activities and decisions can be really helpful. And I think that was really well articulated by Ruth. I want to as well think about ways in which you can help collect resources to incorporate within your plans to try and support groups. There are many faith traditions represented within this plan, but we want, if you come from a Christian tradition, there are some new resources around money and use of money and consumption choices that come from an organisation called ECCR, the Ecumenical Council for Corporate Responsibility, and the programme they have is called Money Makes Change. And I recommend that to you all. Again, it's a Christian resource, but it may be of inspiration to other traditions as well. And I mention it because I think it'd be helpful for you to consider how, when you put together a plan, you can think, are resources like this what our followers and our tradition need? Could this be helpful? One of the other issues that needs to be considered on a personal basis is actually really understanding our impact. Again, Ruth very helpfully introduced this in her contribution earlier, when she was talking about when she was researching the arms trade and the impact that her pension, which seems like for many of us a very passive aspect of our lives, was actively working against our values. And I think that is really revealing that there are many ways in which we can all change the way in which we live and interact and how we hold our relationships, that would make a huge impact. But we won't know that until we actually take the time to conduct something like an audit. I hate using the word audit because to me that seems quite intimidating. I know there are other people out there to whom, they will rub their hands together in glee and think that this is a wonderful informative exercise to undertake. But again, I want to commend to you that there are many faith-focused programs and resources and ways to engage. There are almost too many to mention. If any of you are interested in finding out about whether there is a program such as a Jewish program that you could engage in, a Christian, other faith traditions, then please just let us know, and I would be very happy to put you in touch with them. And it's, again, by incorporating this aspect into your plan that you can give an additional encouragement and a boost to programs such as Eco Church, who are reaching out to Christian congregations in the UK to participate, to help boost their take up, and also to provide impetus within your tradition. And it's in these traditions that we have to think about impact of all the diverse aspects of faith. And something that is a huge importance in many faith traditions is pilgrimage. This is something that is hugely important for many faith traditions, and I believe becoming increasingly popular. And yet there is an enormous impact of pilgrimages around the world. Husna, can I encourage you to join us and start to tell us more about Green Pilgrimage and the work in which you have been involved in? Dr. Husna Ahmad is the founder and director of Global One, which is a Muslim women-led sustainable development organisation. And Green Pilgrimage has been one of your focal areas. And I'd like to hand over to you and ask you to tell us more about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alison. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ladies and gentlemen, respected brothers and sisters. I'm delighted to see, some dear old friends here as well, Ruth, who I haven't seen in quite a few years. And I noticed in the chat, Brother Abdullah from Kenya is there. So, assalamu alaikum to you as well. I'd like to thank Pippa, Alison and Matilda for inviting me to speak today. I'd like to speak to you about the development and dissemination of the message of greening the Hajj. It's very strange that in the 21st century, Muslims the world over are struggling to keep their own houses in order. We're so engulfed by the Western consumption patterns and social norms and ways that we're failing ourselves in the process and our communities. The protection of the environment comes very low down on the set of priorities for both individuals and governments in the Muslim world. We're now only beginning to realize how important this aspect of our religion is, that we are stewards, caliphs of the planet. What I'd like to explore today is the significance of using the Hajj as a starting point for incorporating environmental sustainability into the lives of Muslims around the world. I was invited by Allah to his house, the Kaaba, in 1999, invited by Allah. Allah decides whom he will make a guest of his house each year, and I had the great privilege of going that year. I think that your faith is definitely tested during the Hajj because it's a pilgrimage that tests you physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Surah Ahzab from the Quran states, "We did indeed offer the trust to the heavens and the earth and the mountains, but they refused to undertake it, being afraid thereof. But man undertook it. He was indeed unjust and foolish." Quran 33:72. This trust includes the responsibility for custody of the environment. Environmental degradation and climate change have been identified as the greatest challenges of all time, as well as increasingly becoming one of the world's greatest injustices. With more than 50 independent Muslim countries and a worldwide population of around 1.7 billion Muslims, the effects of environmental degradation and climate change are already adversely affecting the Muslim communities. There's still, however, insufficient awareness and action in the Muslim communities on the environmental agenda, despite Islam clearly promoting the duties of Muslims to protect and conserve the environment. In Islam, Muslims believe that man has been given a responsibility by Allah on this earth, and that man will be accountable to Allah for his actions and the trust placed in him. So the Hajj, it's the largest annually occurring pilgrimage in the world, with I think in 2019, almost 3 million pilgrims. It's a demonstration of the solidarity of Muslims and their submission to Allah. The Hajj emphasizes the brotherhood of Muslims and the equality in the eyes of Allah, regardless of wealth, class, or power. It's one of the 5 pillars of Islam and is a religious duty that must be carried out by every able-bodied Muslim who can afford to do so at least once in his or her lifetime. So here you see some of the rituals that are undertaken during the Hajj. So performing the circular walk, the tawaf around the Kaaba, running or brisk walking between Safa and Marwa, 7 times drinking of the waters from the wells of Zamzam, performing the vigil on the plains of Mount Arafah, performing the symbolic stoning of the shaitan, shaving off or cutting of hair, and performing an animal sacrifice. One very symbolic action that all Muslims must do is enter the state of ihram, which is purity, upon arrival at the boundary of Mecca. Men entering into this pure state they wear special garments, 2 white seamless sheets wrapped around the body, and sandals. Pilgrims remain in a state of ihram throughout the Hajj. While in ihram, pilgrims must not cut their hair or nails, wear perfume, kill animals, or even insects when they're on their Hajj. Although Saudi Arabia, as the host nation for the Hajj, will always play the most important role in the greening agenda, it's important to note that pilgrims come from all the Muslim countries and from diaspora Muslim communities living in the West, for instance, from the UK. Muslim governments have to think seriously about the environmental repercussions of a convergence of 2 to 3 million pilgrims to the sacred sites. Today, Saudi Arabia's economy requires energy at an intensity level 2 times the world average, and domestic energy demand is estimated to be more than double by 2035. Saudi Arabia is working hard to bring solar energy to the kingdom and has installed the Mecca Metro for pilgrims. They've also invested $109 billion in solar energy industry and infrastructure to improve transport links between Mecca and Medina. For the past 5 years, the Saudi government's placed a 50% reduction in quotas on nationals and 20% reduction in quotas on international pilgrims. Now, last year, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw for the first time that the Hajj didn't take place. Only 1,000 local people were able to conduct the Hajj. So speaking to Hajj experts, what's clear is that Hajj and Umrah have become more precious than ever now, and mental, physical, and spiritual preparations are going to be undertaken in 2021 with much greater care and reverence for all of those who can go. Therefore, I believe there will be a greater appetite to avail themselves of information about how to perform a green Hajj and Umrah. I think in terms of the Hajj, we need to be reminded also of the spiritual significance of the Hajj. I believe the underlying purpose of the Hajj, Maqsad al-Hajj, is to enable and inspire Muslims to higher levels of loving and compassionate behavior towards each other and indeed all of humanity. It gives us an opportunity to remind ourselves that the greater the love and compassion we cultivate for others, the closer we draw to our Creator, the Sustainer, Allah. Hajj is a spiritual undertaking which gives Muslims the opportunity to reinvigorate themselves with spiritual nourishment. It's an opportunity to reflect on their existence and their position in the universe. The Hajj is therefore a perfect time to begin incorporating environmental habits into one's personal life and for Muslim governments to focus on the intention of their pilgrims, populations, and on how to walk lightly on the earth. If you see in the past decade, for instance, with myself, with Global One, and with ARC, Alliance of Religions and Conservation, which is now closed down, we published the Green Guide for Hajj 10 years ago. And we also published a book called Islam and Water, the story of Hajar. And there were some cartoons that were made. And we also had a roaming Green Hajj exhibition, and we had some conferences where we brought people from different countries to talk about, and Hajj ministries to come and talk about how we can green the Hajj. Now, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that if Allah accepts your pilgrimage as a mabrur Hajj, the reward is paradise. The reward is paradise. The Arabic word for mabrur derives from the root word bir, which means virtuous conduct, or displaying goodness or kindness towards others. In a further hadith, which is a saying of the Prophet, the companion Jabir, may Allah be pleased with him, reported that on hearing about this immense reward for Hajj, someone asked, "O Messenger of Allah, what makes a Hajj mabrur?" The Prophet ﷺ said, "It is to provide food for the needy, to speak kindly to people, and to spread peace in the world." We can interpret the above hadith to mean that a Hajj Mabrur, a divinely accepted pilgrimage, is measured by the extent to which pilgrims' participation in the Hajj has transformed and changed their character, making them into more loving and caring human beings. In other words, pilgrims are in effect special human beings who are adorned with the characteristics of Mabrur, meaning that they make every effort to be in solidarity with the poor. They try their best to always speak kindly and gently to others, and they strive to support causes that promote peace on the earth. We should use this opportunity of Hajj to be more caring to our planet, and as Allah has made mankind caliphs, vicegerents and custodians of the earth, and as such we are instructed to care for the earth. It's thought that the pilgrimage is the biggest collective human activity. Each year, at least 200 million people become pilgrims from all the different faiths. And people go on pilgrimage to be inspired and to change and to bring inspiration and change home with them. Mahatma Gandhi said, "You must be the change you want to see in the world." And I think the second person that said that today was Ruth when she was speaking earlier. So the Green Guide to the Hajj, it was launched in 2011 and it's the first guide to an environmentally sustainable Hajj, and aimed to encourage Muslim pilgrims to reduce the impact on the earth, as well as practical tips for pilgrims. The guide invites Muslims to use their Hajj experience as an opportunity to reflect on their own lives and move away from material culture, consumption, waste, and it leaves those behind. The Green Hajj Guide to the Hajj has been translated and adapted from English into Bahasa Malaysian, Bahasa Indonesian, Arabic, Hausa, and Bengali. So this is an example of the book, the Islam and Hajj book. This is the Roaming Green Hajj exhibition with, that's myself with Brother Fahruddin in Indonesia. So what's left behind after the pilgrimage? Each year there are over 2 million pilgrims attending Hajj, and this is expected to increase by 200% in the number of pilgrims by 2030. However, such mass human activity inevitably has a negative impact on the climate and the environment. This happens through impacts such as air travel, and more than 42,000 tons of waste is produced during Hajj, formed of food waste, plastic, discarded clothing, and other material. And as you can see from this picture, around 100 million plastic bottles left behind each year. Responsibility must be individual, societal, and governmental. And I'm repeating what former speakers have mentioned. So the individual, it's so important that we ourselves take responsibility as well. Whilst local authorities are starting to help to combat some of this by providing recycling bins throughout the sites of the Hajj, and the Saudi government would like to achieve a greener Hajj, there's much work to be done. I believe this could be a key entry point to putting climate and the environment onto the agenda for Muslims. So this is some of the things that the Green Guide to Hajj mentions. I won't go through it all, I'm sure you can all read it. The values and principles. So these are values and principles, and I think this is key to changing people's habits and changing their approach to life. Submission to Allah, vicegerency on earth, a balanced approach to life, the fact that we're in transit on this earth, this is a temporary place that we're here, and we're accountable for our actions. These are some of the recommendations that the Green Guide to Hajj states. Is that we should remember that the environment is Allah's creation and we must respect it, that all creation is in a state of submission to Allah and has a relationship with Allah. All of nature is a sign from Allah and humans are stewards of this planet, and we have a custodial relationship, and all forms of life possess rights and duties. Other recommendations to reduce waste, go solar, advocacy was mentioned earlier by Ruth, green buildings, mosques, eco-mosques, eco-churches, as Alison was speaking about, cities, greening cities, and having festivals to really remind, in our festivals, greening the festivals that we have. See, these are some of the recommendations that came out of the Green Guide to the Hajj. Be more sustainable, no single-use plastics, use less water for wudu. Wudu is what we do when we're preparing for our prayers. As Muslims, we have to be in a condition of cleanliness. Consider only sacrificing one animal per family. These are some more recommendations. Performing the Hajj once in a lifetime. Now with air travels, well, I don't know after COVID what's going to happen, but before COVID, air travel was very accessible for everyone. So a lot of people were, from the spiritual perspective, they felt that they could wanted to go on Hajj every year or multiple times, and that does put pressure on the planet. Do your best to keep the environment clean. This is something which is a little bit different that I wanted to just touch upon, and this is about the use of, because we sacrifice animals, after the Hajj, and the use of the wool and the skin and other parts of the animal which isn't eaten. I think this can be used for endowment revenues for waqf. So this is something that I think hasn't been looked at enough, and it's something that can actually help to bring reduce waste, because you'll be using every part of the animal for different things, and also to have more charitable income. So I think this is something that really needs to be reflected on. Okay, so moving forward. So this year we're developing a second version of the Green Guide for the Hajj. And that will be providing forward innovation and practical solutions to greening the Hajj. The new edition will provide detailed information about the Hajj, provide case studies of green pilgrimage initiatives undertaken at grassroots levels across the world, put forward innovative and practical solutions, and revise and update figures and facts and practical information about the Hajj. And like the Green Guide for the Hajj, the app, we're also developing a green app, and this will aim to educate pilgrims about the responsibilities. We'll have an interactive map of the Hajj, which could highlight waste recycling zones, crowded zones, eco-friendly hotels, accommodation, links and information about green consumerism, tips for pilgrims to green their own Hajj, e.g. not buying single-use plastic items, and working out one's individual carbon footprint for the Hajj. So I'd like to conclude with a quote from Ibn Kathir, who speaks about the mu'min, which means the faithful believer. Ibn Kathir stated, the mu'min are a people who have been prevented through the Quran, from indulging in the pleasures of this world. It comes between them and what might destroy them. The mu'min is like a prisoner in this world, who tries to free himself from its shackles and chains, placing his trust in nothing in it until the day he meets his creator. He knows full well that he is accountable for everything that he hears, sees, and says, and for everything that he does with his body. So, this is a new initiative that's just been started called Ummah for Earth. Global One is one of the founding members of this, and we're really targeting the youth through this. We feel that it's important to have a global movement of youth being engaged. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Dr. Husna. That was wonderful, and a great opportunity for us to consider actually what the impact is of these pilgrimages, and how to continue to perform these very important religious activities in a way that is respectful and in keeping with faith traditions, in respect to protecting nature. Thank you. So I want to move on now to thinking about protecting nature in a local sense. We've had quite a diverse range of topics covered today. We've thought about how we can think about our personal approaches to simple living. We've thought about what that means in terms of personal consumption, and also in finding out what our impact is, and a bit of a focus on the impact of pilgrimage. But we're going to sort of end on a slightly more positive note, because a lot of what we've been talking about, although I'm with Ruth absolutely on there is joy in enough, but a lot of this has been about stepping away from something, and Stanley is going to be talking about stepping towards something, which is community protection of nature. So Stanley, can I encourage you to join us and start to share your presentation? Stanley is the Community Conservation Manager for Rocha, Kenya, and I'm sure he'll introduce Rocha and himself more fully. Over to you, Stanley.
Thank you very much. Can you see my screen?
We can. Don't worry, Stanley. You're definitely on the right. You're on the right tracks.
Okay.
That's it. Perfect. Wonderful.
Thank you very much. Yeah, my name is Stanley Baya, and I work in Kenya for Rocha, Kenya. And just a brief about Rocha, it's written Rocha, but it's pronounced Rocha. It's an international conservation organization that was started in Portugal, and that's why we kept the name Rocha, which is a Portuguese term meaning the rock. We work in Kenya, we work in more than 19 countries so far worldwide. I'm based with the Kenyan project at the coast of Kenya. The way we work is we have our core values. One of them is Christian. We are a Christian organization, and our work is in conservation. We work with communities. We are a cross-cultural organization, and we work in collaboration with other organizations. And we term these core values that we have as 5 C's. So that's just a brief about Rocha. Let me go straight to my discussion for today. And looking at nature protection, what I will do is I will share a bit of my personal experiences with the work that we are doing in Kenya. And I will also share some of the programs and projects that we have been involved in that will address some issues to do with nature protection. So I hope you will be able to draw parallels from my discussion with the diverse situations as represented in this forum, so that we can, people will still be able to apply some of the things that we are doing, or they might be able to advise us on other ways of how we can protect our protect creation. So what I'll do, I'll first describe, just as an example, the uniqueness of the ecosystem we are working to conserve here in Kenya. Then I will highlight some of the challenges that it is facing, and the interventions that we are employing to protect it. And then I will finally discuss a little bit about our faith approach in the work that we are doing. At the coast here, we have a really unique ecosystem. And it's a complex ecosystem that brings together various habitats and unique biodiversity in a really interesting relationship, because the ecosystem is designated as a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. It is a key biodiversity area. It is an important bird area. Locally, it is also designated as a forest reserve, and it also comprises of a marine reserve. So it's quite complex. It stretches right from the ocean, from the coral reef, all the way up to several kilometers inland. So it's a very interesting ecosystem. And it is connected now, the terrestrial part is connected to the marine park via a small intertidal area, which is voted to be one of the most productive mangrove ecosystems in the world. And the forest around here is also recognized as one of Africa's most important when it comes to birds conservation. At 420 square kilometers, the Arabuko-Sokoko forest is the largest remaining patch of block or forest that once used to stretch all the way from Somali down to Mozambique to the south. So the whole of this coastal area used to be that one big ecosystem called coastal dry forest. But now it is only survived by small fragments, of which Arabuko-Sokoko forest is currently the largest of all the fragments that are remaining. It has a very interesting vegetation types, because right from the seashore, the forest changes as the soil changes. So the vegetation is also divided in very distinct different types. We start with the mangrove forest closer to the ocean at Meadow Creek, but as you go up, the soil changes to dark sandy soils and forms another forest we call mixed forest. As you go further, you encounter very white sandy soils, and it forms a very open forest of what we call Nyombo woodland or Stygia woodland. Then if you go further, the soil changes into red soil, and the forest becomes very short and very thick. A very dense forest we call the Cyanometra thicket, because of the dominant species there is called Cyanometra weberi. Now, this forest is a home for Africa's smallest owl. We call it the Sokoke-Scops owl. It's about 15 centimeters in full length. And it prefers the short forest, that is the Cyanometra thicket, further north and west of the forest. And among the many mysteries about these Sokoke-Scops owls is that the nest has not yet been discovered. Now we're in 2021 now, with all the technology and all the educational advancement, we have not yet managed to locate an exact nest of a Sokoke-Scops owl. But it is believed to be breeding in one particular species called the silver oak, or Berkelina hilensis around here. So the owl is mostly found in Arabuko-Sokoke forest, but there is a small population of the same in Tanzania, in Usambara Mountains. There is another species that I want to also highlight, is a species called the Clark's weaver. The Clark's weaver is purely endemic to the coast of Kenya. You can't find it anywhere else in the world. And its nest as well was only discovered in 2013 after many, many expeditions to look for the nest. It's only in 2013 that we managed to find it in sieges, in seasonal swamps, in the Kacha woodland, which is another one of the small patches that are remaining, which lies about 40 kilometers to the north of Arabuko-Sokoke forest. I also want to highlight one also very unique animal in the forest. It's called the golden-rumped sengi. This used to be called golden-rumped elephant shrew until it was recently reclassified, and it was known to be a different animal. It's a sengi, not an elephant shrew. It is known to be distantly related to elephants actually, but it's much smaller. It's the size of a rabbit. And this is also found only in Arabuko-Sokoke forest and also in the Kacha woodland, and nowhere else in the world. There are many other interesting stories about different types that I can talk about. Right now, I've just highlighted a few: the Sokoke-Scops owl, Clark's weaver, and golden-rumped sengi. But there's also an Adas daika. It's a small antelope that is also only found in Arabuko-Sokoke forest and nowhere else. The other very special species is a mongoose called Sokoke bushy-tailed mongoose. So the forest is quite rich in biodiversity, and biodiversity of quite high value because it is almost at the brink of extinction. But then you ask yourself, what does that mean to the local people who live around here? Because they have depended on the forest resources for their livelihoods for many years. That's where they get their wood products, and specifically the tree that the Sokoke-Scops owl prefers and is thought to be breeding in is mostly sought for wood carvings because it has just the best wood carvings. If you go to the curio market and you're looking for a souvenir, if you buy the best, most likely you will buy a wood carving from the silver oak. So the local people need it to sell and raise money. Then while doing that, then it is putting pressure on the Sokoke Scopes Owl. Agricultural expansion, the Sino-Metra forest, which is preferred by the Sokoke Scopes Owls, is just the best soil for pineapple production. If you go to the Dakachi woodland to the north, you find that many people are going there to buy land for pineapple production, and mostly they are looking for the Sino-Metra forest. So that is further putting pressure on many species, but just for the sake of today, on the Sokoke Scopes Owl. There's also an adjudication process going on in the Dakachi woodland. So the whole forest is now being declared an adjudication area, meaning very soon every inch of land will be owned by somebody, and there is no land use plan, meaning they can do whatever they want, and most likely all that forest will go. There's energy needs that people need to satisfy. People use fuel wood and charcoal. And the trees that produce the best charcoal are indigenous trees, because they're very good quality hardwoods with very dense wood and charcoal that can be produced. So these are genuine and normal needs that need to be met every day. But however, the pressure keeps on increasing. People have always depended on the forest resources, but the pressure is increasing. It is increasing due to many factors. Among them is population growth. There is technological advancement. People used to carry charcoal on bicycles. Nowadays, there's literally a motorbike in every home. So shifting charcoal from one end to the other has become very, very easy. Other factors as well as monetization of the economy, it's like people are more interested in hard cash now than the ready resources that they can derive from nature. So human activities are actually the main reason why the environment is getting depleted so fast. But for the poor communities living on daily earnings, conservation is seen to be an unnecessary luxury. It is for those who already have something to eat, then they can think of an active environmental protection. And that is from the discussions we have had with the people who, when you find somebody cutting down trees and you talk to them, they will tell you, now, what do I give to my children? They need food, not tomorrow, right now, today, for this evening. And that is why I feel like I have to cut down a tree. Also, to the government, there is always the question of how much money does the owl bring to the GDP? So why should the government be investing in saving the owls, and instead of giving out land for people to farm, to pay tax, but also to get food for their families? So the issues we are dealing here is we are looking at the drivers of the values. What will make somebody choose to protect over to exploit? And we have carried out various programs here. One of them is environmental awareness and education, because we believe people will only protect what they know, and actually what they know very well. When they know that something has value and it's worthy protecting, then people will protect it. So we've been running an environmental awareness and education program with schools and community groups for the last 20 years here in Watamu, at the coast of Kenya. There has been significant outcomes out of this. We've seen students who opted to go and do environmental studies just because they now believe that the environment needs serious protection. So we have seen some really positives from the environmental education that we have been doing. The other way is also for people that will make people value the ecosystem is the direct benefits they can derive from the resource. And we had a a project where we built an ecotourism facility at Meader Creek. And we have experienced quite a significant attitude change towards the ecosystem, just because people know that this is where I get school fees for my children. So we've been running a program, we call it Arabuko Sokoke Schools and Ecotourism Scheme, that has been generating income and supporting community members, particularly children going to secondary schools with with scholarships for secondary school. However, even if we come up with other interventions, there is the want more phenomenon. People will appreciate what they get, but they will still be needing more because the resources are not unlimited in terms of what they can produce. So still the pressure is going on and on. So this brings us to the fundamental question of, instead of just looking at what we can get from nature, instead we start questioning who is the owner actually, and what does he say about the earth that he created? Is there an owner? Is there somebody who cares for the earth? Is there somebody who created? So from this, we have been running a biblical-based creation stewardship training in churches around the Kacha Woodland and also in Arabuko Sokoke Forest. Now here we're trying to reach to the hearts of the people, to the things that, to what the people believe in mostly. Around here, there are three main faith groups. There are more, but the three main faith groups are the Christians, who are the majority. Then we have a significant number of Muslims at the coast, and also there are those that practice traditional African religion. All these people, all these different faiths do recognize that there is a creator actually, and the creator loves his creation and he takes care of his creation. So we have started a program where we've been doing biblical-based creation stewardship trainings in churches, and we have seen some tremendous responses from the program. We've seen a whole church, a pastor leading a whole church to repentance, people like really crying because they realize that they have sinned against God by not looking after his creation. So we see this is it is the most sustainable way of protecting nature, is by getting people to see how the creator, how their faith relates to the creation that they use in their day-to-day life. We use verses like in Genesis, where the Lord God took man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to take care of it, in Genesis chapter 2, verse 15. And also when he said, let us make man in our own image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea and birds in the sky, over the livestock and the wild animals, and all over all creation that move along the earth. And we have helped churches to interpret that term, to rule over, which has been mostly abused actually to mean to plunder, to take whatever you want because you are a ruler. And bringing in the aspect of Jesus' leadership, Jesus-style leadership of ruling, meaning actually taking care of, we've managed to get people to respond quite positively to caring for creation. We have another approach that we have employed, which is farming God's way trainings with communities. Now, people have been farming all along, but then we have introduced them to a different way of looking at farming. And so we've been training people in a type of farming we call farming God's way, which is basically conservation farming, which protects the soil. And then we bring in the aspect of the creator, of the aspect of faith. And so this kind of farming has 6 main biblical keys, as we call them. And one is to acknowledge God and God alone. And the second principle is to consider our ways, to turn, to change, and to repent whenever we realize that the way we have been doing things has not actually been pleasing to God. There's a third key, which is understanding God's all-sufficiency, as depicted in 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 8. But also, this is where we bring in verses like, yes?
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, especially because you're talking about farming God's way, which is something that I'm enormously appreciative of. We're running out of time slightly, and I was just wondering whether I could just pause you there and bring in all the other panelists. And whilst we're doing that, to say thank you very, very much to all of you and your contributions. Thank you, Husna, if you could join as well, Ruth. Because I think this will give us an opportunity to answer the questions that have already come up, and also hopefully, Stanley, for you to be able to just finish off what you were saying about farming God's way, because it is of great interest. Pippa, would you like to join us and take us through the question and answer aspect of this session?
Well, thank you, Alison. The first question that we have had in is for you, Ruth. It's come from Lorna, who says she would love to hear from you about any quantitative tools that you recommend for assessing simple living, and asks what faith organisations could include in their faith long-term plans to promote this area, and references the ecological footprint calculator.
Yeah, thank you. So a couple of other ones that are helpful are the WWF has its One Planet calculator. I can't remember if it's called something else, but it's a really good footprint stroke lifestyle calculator. And then also there's a really good organisation called Climate Stewards that is, it's an offsetting organisation linked with Rocha, and we use them at Tearfund as well. We offset our flights through them. And one of the things they've done is develop a lifestyle calculator where you can put in all your activities and see what your footprint is from that and what your CO2 emissions are. So those two are ones that I'd recommend, WWF and Climate Stewards.
And then just while we're talking about further resources, Victoria, you've also kindly written in the chat, there is a site livingresponsibly.org, and you say it's where numerous valuable resources for individuals, communities and schools are available, and they cover topics such as how do we use our time, why buy, the symbolic aspects of consumption, and you also mentioned the UN Environment link as well, which has ideas of sustainable lifestyles. So we will make those both available as well to everybody.
Can I just also say, if people want something to read, this is Ellie's for Lifestyle, Christian Living That Doesn't Cost the Earth. And although it's written from a Christian perspective in that it's got some Bible bits in it, it will be relevant across, and it goes through the alphabet and takes an issue for each letter. So B looks at bananas, B is for bananas and looks at global trade. W is for water. I won't take you through the whole alphabet, but each chapter is very short with 2 or 3 really practical suggestions of things that you can do. So that it's a really good resource for getting people engaged and actually seeing some of the practical changes that we can make.
And maybe Husna, you could mention where some of the resources that you referenced are also available for people to download, and we can post the links of those too.
The Green Guide for Hajj, the Hajj story, they're all on the Global One website. But as I said, watch this space, because hopefully by July this year, we'll be launching our app and our second version of the Green Guide for Hajj. So I'm quite really excited about that.
One question came in asking about Sikh environmental programs or organisations, and I know, Alison, you referenced EcoSeek and provided a link to them. We also had Ravneet, who is the project manager at EcoSeek, speaking in the webinar last week. So I would ask Matilda, when you post the webinars we've already had, if people could go back to look at that one. It says a lot about what EcoSeek are doing and their environmental programme. One question I think, Alison, I will throw to you, asks about any certain formats for the long-term plans proposals. I know you have answered that in writing as well.
Yes, I have. And for those of you that haven't looked at it, I'll just give a very brief summary of what I said, which is there a set format? The answer is no, there is not. The format is left open. This is for you to work with as works best for you. In all aspects, we're trying to make this as unburdensome as possible a process, and something that really springs from your own energies and interests. As I said in the introduction, we do suggest 7 key areas. These are prompts. They are not prescriptive. Some will be relevant, some will not. There may be issues that we have not covered in those key areas, and that's fine too. I put in some recommendations about investing time and energy in, the things that we would require really are to encourage you very strongly and deeply to invest time and energy in articulating and understanding and absorbing your theological approach, and using that as a foundation for any commitments that you make. And also, when you do think about commitments, really think hard about what is it that you have uniquely to offer. What can you give? But what do you need? We want you to be ambitious, but also not to curtail yourself if you just need some technical assistance or other inputs. Don't be afraid to ask for help, and also be ambitious, but be realistic. We know that what is happening with, what will be well over 100 faith long-term plans coming together at the moment is going to be a huge grassroots input and impact from religions, and could really be transformative over the next decade. But they will only achieve this outcome if they are very much rooted in the deliverables, and we know that that you are willing and able to follow through on them. So no set format, but just lots of encouragement in some directions.
Thank you. We have a couple of comments and a question from Abdullah, who is from the Supreme Council of Kenyan Muslims. Abdullah says, foremost, I commend all of the presenters for their illuminating presentations. I appreciate the fact that as humans, we do have similarities in our lifestyles, but lifestyle in itself is very diverse and varies from culture to culture, from region to region, and from religion to religion. Do we have a plan to harmonise all of these differences and come up with one unified operational manual for effective outcome? I wonder if anybody would like to give thoughts on the comment and the question.
Well, so I'm not sort of formally part of this process, so I think it'll be up to the organisers. But my initial thought is that actually that's probably not the best thing to do. Just with your opening statement that we have all got different contexts and different situations and different faith bases that we come from. And I think one of the wonderful things is, rather than trying to harmonise them, is developing different ones according to our situations and contexts, and then looking at the different themes that relate, but also where we're different, and so where we can then learn from each other. So we don't all have to be the same, and I don't think there's necessarily a do or don't thing when it comes to lifestyles, but it's I had to use the J word, it is a journey. My little motto is many little steps in the right direction. So it's taking those steps, and we can learn from others as we do that.
Thank you, Ruth. Oh, Husna wants to say something. I was just going to say that was very helpful, because that is exactly what I was going to say. Is that I'm not I'm not sure that's what we need. I think that there is strength in diversity, and let's celebrate that. Husna, you wanted to say something.
Thank you. But Abdullah, I think when it comes to the planet, we need to recognize that we've got only this planet. So, all of us have to come together and we have to find solutions together. But at the same time, I mean, one of the reasons why some of the MDGs, Millennium Development Goals, weren't successful was because they're trying to have things under one umbrella, or they were trying to push things in a certain way. So if we understand the nuances and the cultural sensitivities of and faith sensitivities of the different faiths, and we give the due respect, and we recognize that people come at things in a different way, it will not only bring richness to the solutions, but it will be sustainable long-term solutions, which the faith plans are trying to aim for. And at the same time, I think one of the key things about the UN Sustainable Development Goals is leaving no one behind. And I think we need to move away. And I'm glad that we had Stanley here presenting on this panel, but we need to move away from that north-centric sort of approach to finding solutions. So I think that's what the faith plans I'm hoping will really be pushing. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for all of the, Abdullah has actually said, thank you very much for the responses. They're highly appreciated. I'm very aware of time. So I think all that's left to say is we will compile all of these resources, and we will provide the links and make them all available on the website. I think we've had some great resources that are coming through. So thank you. And I'll hand back to Alison.
Thank you, Pippa. It's always a shame sometimes bringing these Q&A sessions to a close, and it is just wonderful to have a group of you all together and to keep this momentum up for this programme, and to feel this uniting force of we are coming from many faith traditions, from many places in the world, and we come, celebrate diversity, celebrate different contexts, think about what we can do in a way that is meaningful for our context and our faith tradition and our relationship with nature. And it always gives me great pleasure to be involved in these webinars, to feel that momentum and that positivity. So thank you to all of you who joined, because most of you will be doing a lot of the hard work in putting together these plans. I know that we've posted in the chat the dates for the forthcoming webinars. Please do continue to join us. If you can't, don't worry. They are broadcast live on Facebook, and you can also watch them again on websites. Thank you very much to all our panelists. I know it is an ask to take time out of your current roles and to prepare this information, but it is hugely appreciated, and does help us all to think more creatively and to give us these examples and ideas about how we can do it. So thank you, Dr. Husna, Ruth, Valerio and Stanley. And that's all from us. See you again soon. Bye-bye.